Welcome, folks. I'm Coach Jeremy, and we are joined by a excellent group of coaches, a very passionate group of coaches, a knowledgeable group of coaches. And Coach Noah is going to get us started for today. He's jumping in after a few months. Noah, I believe you were saying that you recently finished your PN Level 1 certification, so congratulations on that front. And you're working with a few people already, so you're getting some very practical experience. And there was a few kind of issues that you could use some clarity on. One of them being a new client that you're working with who's trying to gain some muscle. Tell us a little bit more about that client, and let's see if we can give you some practical strategies that you can take back to your next session with them. Oh, sorry, you mean there you go.
All right, yeah, thank you for the introduction. Yeah, so this new client is pretty sedentary. He hasn't been doing any strength training whatsoever. Walks quite a bit, but just doesn't eat very much in general. So his goal is to build muscle and essentially, yeah, just build muscle and figure out how to get more food intake because he feels like he just is not able to eat the required macros that I was discussing with him. That
Okay,
might be a requirement for building muscle and recovery. So I just wanted to ask you if you had any advice or strategies that I could give him to get him started building up to being able to actually achieve that intake of the macros that's required.
cool. Let's get some background information in to see if we can help your client. So one question that pops up for me would be in terms of the macros that you're suggesting for him, what is the basis for that current intake that you're giving him? Do you have some numbers you can share with us? Or can you share where you sourced your numbers from?
From the PN calculator.
Okay, cool. Uh, and do we have kind of a baseline understanding of where the client is starting at? Kind of where are they now, and then what is the gap between where they are and where they need to be?
As far as what they're eating?
Correct.
No, that's a good question, and I would say not very accurate. Not a very accurate one. It's just more
Okay,
of what he told me, which is
cool.
usually pretty far off from
So
my
we have
experience.
some self-report then. So we have some
Yeah.
self-report, mostly with the feeling that the client is suggesting that's like, I am unable to eat enough to hit my target macros.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that he's saying that he's not able to. It's just that he just doesn't do that, and he needs help figuring out how to do that.
Okay, so the roadblock that it sounds like is not so much that it's like a lack of hunger, or that he doesn't have access to food. It's just that he's currently not doing the steps required to make that
Yeah.
intake possible.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I don't even know, like, to be honest, like, what should I just tell him off the bat? Like, okay, so here's the plan. Like, you're gonna start, doing this and doing that. Like, the initial thought that came to my head was just kind of breaking down the meals, like, not trying to eat too much at once and just kind of having smaller meals throughout the day. That was one of the ideas that I had. Um, but yeah, that's that's
Cool.
what
Any other ideas pop up for you initially before, or anything that you've either shared with your client or anything that you're thinking of sharing with your client?
just that, and then also, so he's very sedentary. So I was just initially thinking that once he started getting on a workout program or workout routine, that he will start building a lot more hunger and
Mhm.
like more hungry in general.
Gotcha.
So I just figured that's probably like a something that we could start to.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Uh, Here, let's with the coaches here, let's see if we can get some role play going. You'll be our stand-in for the client since you know them the best. Uh, Coaches, what
Okay.
questions would you ask Noah slash Noah's client? what would you need to know in order to help this client take the next appropriate step?
Okay. Um,
Go for it, Anne Marie.
uh, I like this conversation because I use this calculator all the time as well. And I think what I generally start with, and I think that I've heard this from you, Jeremy, but you can correct me obviously if I'm wrong. But just looking at what the calculator says and what the client is currently doing and gradually moving them in the direction that you need to go to. So
Mhm.
as if like I have a client that's eating 4 servings of carbs a day, but for her weight loss goal, it really says that she needs to have 1 serving of carbs a day. Then we're just gradually bringing her to the right point instead of just like it's overwhelming sometimes if you give them like a complete change of everything at one time. So it's
Mhm.
just like kind of moving the dial in the right direction.
Cool. So what that would look like in this scenario could be, hey, this week, client, we're just going to focus on increasing your protein. So we're not going to worry about total energy intake or carbs and fats. We're just going to work on implementing strategies to help you bump up protein over this week and potentially into the next few weeks, depending on how long it takes you to kind of close the gap there.
Mhm.
Cool. Anything else pop up for folks?
Sorry, I'm having problems with my camera, but I'd want to
All
know
good,
what
Diane.
he's tried in the past and has he been successful in the past building muscle?
The answer is no, not
Okay,
very soon.
So
cool.
you already asked him that.
I did ask him that. I said, like, what have you previously tried? And has any of that worked? That is like one of my consultation questions. So I appreciate you asking me that. But yeah, so nothing's really worked. She's always been pretty, for the most part, just like kind of skinny,
Mhm.
underweight a little bit, not very athletic. So yeah, that's kind of the situation.
Did you mention how old he was?
35.
35.
Yeah,
Cool.
and
So
I
we're
also
filling in some of the gaps information wise. Anything else, Noah?
oh no, I was just gonna say I appreciate also yeah, mentioning like taking the baby steps about like just not diving into it too much. And just doing like where you're saying about the carbs, like just focus on carbs for this week. The question I have about that, also something that I'm trying to build, is like a system on the abilities of my clients, like what this like how to figure out where to start with that. Like how much can this client handle? How much could he, do we have to take baby steps, or can we straight dive straight into it? Um, that's kind of where I'm at also, and I'm kind of working on figuring out like systems for that, so I could like kind of place people in certain levels.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, but I appreciate that advice because yeah, that's a good one.
Emery, do you have something else you wanted to add or ask?
No, I'm just listening to what he's saying and you know, I mean, I love the conversation because sometimes I think you have to really put it in the client's hands of how much they can handle and how much they can change at one time.
Uh-huh.
Generally, I look at the intake questionnaire that they do and see what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are and see what areas they would need to improve on or the skills they need to develop to move them in the right direction.
Uh-huh.
Usually when I have that first conversation after I look at everything, I tend to present maybe like 3 different skills that we can focus on initially that would help them move in the right direction. But ultimately, I ask them, what are they comfortable with? What would they like to start with themselves first? And then, their confidence level of that one item or 2 items that they decide that they would like to start with. It's a lot of feedback from the client to see what they think that they're capable of. I think I generally guide them in the direction of something that I think will help or like present some things that will help. But ultimately I leave it in their hands of what they're comfortable with starting.
Excellent answer. To give us a little more context, Barbara, was there something you wanted to add?
No.
Cool. Well, I mean, I appreciate seeing your face. Uh, so Noah, a couple of things that I would add in to kind of like fill in some of the gaps here. So getting greater clarity in terms of what is the client's actual roadblock. So we know the output that we want to see. So this person is looking to build muscle. We know that, or we have a strong belief at least, that they are not eating enough. That seems to be the problem that we're solving for. There are several skills and actions that we probably need to assess in order to help them cover that gap or to solve that problem. So hunger and fullness is something that you mentioned. As activity levels increase, will their hunger naturally increase, which would be something that would likely be helpful for getting them to eat more. So assessing their hunger and fullness skills is probably something we want to do. Their planning and preparation skills. So is this person handy in the kitchen? Do they know how to prep some basic meals for themselves? Are they actually way more advanced there? And that's something that's a strong skill set for them and something we can really lean on uh, for future development. Uh, Planning and prepping is not only just like what actually happens from a manual labor sense in the kitchen. It can also come down to uh, their just preparation skills or their overall like project management skills. Are they able to sign up for a meal delivery service? Are they able to kind of plan out a menu appropriately for themselves a few days at a time, a week at a time, a month at a time? What does that look like? So assessing their ability to use some of those skills to also move them along. And then are they able to kind of also trigger themselves to eat appropriate amounts at certain points in the day? That's another skill that we'll need to assess as well, a little bit more direct to the actual thing that we're working on. But there's all these kind of sub skills that we need to understand and then check those boxes. Are all those things in alignment as well? And if there are some gaps missing there, then we may actually need to focus on those before we actually care about the long distant goal of like, are they gaining muscle mass at an appropriate rate or are they eating enough? Because if we're not satisfying those earlier requirements to allow them or to put them in a position to succeed, I wouldn't focus too much on hitting macros or anything just yet. Let's make sure that they're in the environment and they have the appropriate skills to succeed. And then we can work on, hey, let's take a look at some of these outcomes and see how things are changing over time now. Does that make sense? Uh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, thank you, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. That was yeah, thanks everybody because that helped me a lot right now.
Excellent. Yeah, probably the first step for you as a coach in between now and the next conversation that you have the client is kind of assessing where does the actual roadblock exist to their taking action here, and then having those conversations, and then collaboratively coming up with suggestions on how to implement some of those things. It might be as simple as just like, yeah, they just need a protein shake and a peanut butter sandwich, and like they've covered the gap. They're getting enough protein, enough calories, done deal. Everything else can stay the same. Uh, but you'll likely want to take a little bit more of a holistic approach. Look at the data you already have in terms of what does their intake say, what have conversations that you've previously had with them led you to believe, uh, and then this actually goes nicely into the next idea that you brought forward as well, which is how do you get a sense of the pace of progression for a client in terms of how much can I start them with, uh, and then how quickly do I progress from skill to skill? Anne Marie gave you a good starting point, and I would agree with a lot of those points as well. It largely stems from conversations that you have with the client. A few things that I would encourage you to take a look at would be uh, what is their current stress load, and how are we assessing that? So their ability to add new things is going to be largely contingent about like on the resources they have available. So those resources will be not only financial, but it will also be energy, time, and then what are the commitments that they have that also require those things. So someone who's like, you mentioned your person's 35. If they're 35, they're a caregiver, they work a full-time job that is quite stressful, they have a home environment that's maybe not super conducive to dedicating all of their time and energy and resources to their health and fitness. That's going to be very different than someone who's 35, they're single, They have a really high paying job that's not super stressful, that doesn't follow them around. Uh, and they're flush with resources. They can probably do a little bit more. So that's something to consider at like a very basic level. Then kind of like what is their desire for doing more? Some folks are like, yeah, you know what? I've done crazy protocols in the past and it kind of took over my life. And maybe I even got to where I wanted to be physically, but I actually kind of hated it and it felt really unsustainable. And that's why I'm seeking out a different approach. So getting their history and their experiences to understand what have they done previously and how does that influence what we are going to do together. And other things that I would look at is also just like how important is the goal to them currently right now and what pace do they want to achieve it. So if they're like, I need to do this thing in 3 months because I have a career opportunity on the line, that person is likely going to need to implement strategies much more quickly. They are typically the type of client where we gravitate towards, hey, instead of letting you kind of figure it out over time, which typically works well for long-term development, I may actually have to take a little bit more of a forceful hand here and tell you these are the things you have to do in this order, in a little bit more of a regimented style. Whereas, again, on the other end of that spectrum, we may want to foster long-term development. We want to set them up with skills that, hey, if your goals change down the line, you know what skills you need to adapt in order to meet those new goals. And we can have time to kind of figure things out. We can take it a little bit slower. There's no immediate rush here. There's not that sense of urgency. That also will figure into what is the pace and progression of those things. I would say a lot of this also, you kind of get a feel as you work with more clients, starting to listen for specific language where folks tend to be like, hey, so I'm really gung ho and I want to do the thing. In that situation, I, as a coach, normally use some language such as, I am going to purposely put up some obstacles here. Show me that you can clear them, such as like uh, you're able to plan your meals appropriately. You already have some macro tracking skills. You've done all those basic things, and then we can increase our rate of progress quite rapidly. But if we're unable to kind of clear some of those barriers, they typically tell me it's like our skill development is maybe not at the same level of our ambition, and a slower approach will probably be better for you in the long run.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing a mentor of mine once shared that I always found really useful was that it's easier to add things to someone's program from a mental standpoint than it is to take them away. People typically don't feel great when they have to have a conversation and it's like you've actually said you were going to do X, Y, and Z, and you barely did kind of the first thing on the list, so we're going to
Yeah.
reduce the list. That
Uh-huh.
doesn't feel as good to someone, especially at
Yeah.
the beginning of a coaching relationship. I don't want them to associate me with a sense of failure or the sense of their inability to act.
Uh-huh.
Whereas if I take the other approach and I say, hey, these three things, X, Y, and Z, we can probably do them. For this week, I actually just want you to focus on X. Show me how you do that. And then when you come back next week, we can certainly ramp it up. And if they kill that thing, they did super well. It's like, great, you did a great job. Let's add in one more thing this week. And then in the following week, we can repeat the same process again. Uh, that feels really affirming to someone, helps them feel like, yes, I'm in the right place, I'm in the right path, I'm with the right coach.
Okay.
Uh, Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of how to pace some of your progression with your clients. And then for your former question with this client who's looking to gain weight, understanding some of those roadblocks a little bit better, and then picking some strategies or making sure that the skill sets, the multiple skill sets required there, are all in check so that they can do the thing they need to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I think you had maybe one or two other questions. Anything else pop up for you right now?
Yeah, I just like to some feet like some my response kind of to that is just I think like right now I'm just kind of I feel like I have to get people results within like 30 days or else it's like not worth them signing up. Like that's kind of where my head's at right now. So I feel like I'm having trouble. Yeah, like so I think I needed to hear that what you said because I think I just need to like slow it down. Like can't be trying to force people into some crazy thing because, like you said, like most people are just not even capable of jumping into something like that. So just gotta rethink it. But yeah, man, that's it for that. Now the other question that I had was just like figuring out how to come up with the macro percentages, like
Ah,
what fits right for who and why, and so that's just something that I probably should dive back into a book with about. But yeah, just kind of something I've been wanting to do more research on.
coaches, any insight for Noah here in terms of uh, how to determine appropriate macro percentages for individual clients? Any starting point that you reference? Let us know. Maybe some fingers are typing in the background, but in the meantime, Noah, it sounds like you're already familiar with the PN calculator. If you're using the PN professional calculator that all our L1 students have access to in the resource center, you can play around with the macro percentages there, but there is a default setting. And I believe it's quite close to about like 30% protein, 30% carbs, uh, or actually 30% protein, 30% fat, 40% carbs. My understanding for average American diet, it looks like normally closer to 60 to 70% carbs, and then 15 to 20% protein, 15 to 20% dietary fat. Uh, Most times, I think for the average person, moving towards kind of the preset that is suggested in the PN calculator, where it's like protein comes up significantly, carbs comes down a little bit, fat stays around where it is, tends to work quite well for most folks. Where we start to encourage people to modify those is in two cases. One, if there is an athletic event where the person either requires a lot more carbs or a lot more fat, that's typically where we're seeing changes, or where someone is trying to meet a certain preference. So maybe they're just someone who's like, hey, I want to try a certain dietary style that encourages a higher percentage of dietary fat, like a ketogenic diet. That's where you may see personal preference leading the change there. Uh, Sorry, I think you're muted there. Still muted.
Okay, sorry. So that makes so much sense. Thank you. So basically, what you're saying is, if there's a lot of intense training, higher carbs. Is that a good kind of?
Typically, and I mean, intense training needs like a qualifier around it. Uh,
Yeah,
what is intense for like one person may not be the
yeah.
same for another.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I look for typically, it's like, is there a certain, there are certain scenarios where this makes a lot of sense. Like distance running at certain distances, we start to require differences in how we fuel. So like think of someone who's doing like a half marathon or a full marathon or an ultra marathon. Like as those increase, the fueling demands are going to go significantly up, specifically
Uh-huh.
for carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Uh, for someone who's like, I'm sedentary, but I'm running a 5K, like they probably don't need to change their dietary strategy too much. For them, that
Uh,
might feel like a quite intense change, but in the grand scheme of human nutrition, it's like not that huge a consideration.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah, most recreational athletes are not going to need to see significantly dietary changes from a fueling perspective. Where they may see additional benefit is typically bringing up protein, which is something that your average client is likely going to benefit from across the board.
Okay, gotcha.
Uh, yeah, feel free to take a look at some of those, the kind of standard macro breakdown. I don't think there are presets for specific athletic endeavors, but there may be some additional changes for if you put in kind of like body comp or weight loss, where the calculator itself, part of the logic in it, is always going to be to prioritize protein first So we'll make sure, even on a really significantly reduced caloric intake, it will always make sure that protein needs are addressed appropriately. And then from there, carbs and then fats. So that's kind of the priorities that we're trying to also hit in our coaching. It's like quite often we work on helping clients to improve their protein status first, getting in adequate protein, then fueling with the appropriate amount of carbs depending on how active they are, and then dietary fat typically helping with satiation and making sure that they're getting essential fatty acids.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, thank you for those questions to kind of get us started there. Anyone have any additional questions or comments for Noel before we move on? I don't have a name, I just see user, but you can share your name.
Thank you so much. My name is Kinda Youssef. I just joined PN before a couple of months ago. I'm during the process here. I'm struggling to sign up on the Zoom thingy and to sign up and register my name. I don't know why it's not accepting. So that's why I'm.
If you hover over your own kind of like the little box that has your face in it, there's a little 3-dot button there. If you click on that 3-dot button, it should have a drop down menu and you should see rename there. So then you can put in your appropriate name.
Nothing. There's only notes, whiteboard. If I'm not sure if I'm the right one here you're talking about, but I think yes, it's show record, caption, notes.
Oh, I think you're clicking on the 3-dot button at the bottom corner. Oh,
Yeah.
actually, so go to the top right corner
So
and there's a button that says view there. So if you click on the view, if you put it into gallery view.
Yes, okay, I got it, I think.
Okay, so now do you have a whole bunch of small people that are looking?
Gallery view, hide. Okay, here we go. Yes.
Okay, and now if you hover over your face, it should highlight that box. And then the mute button comes up and another little 3-dot button is right next to it.
I just don't want to take your time, but
Oh, good. We can spend another 30 seconds on this and then you can just ask your question.
okay, so you know what? Let me figure out. I'm gonna try to remember what you said now. I'm just going back to the day and just about the issue I was having, and something I would like to share to correct me if I'm right or wrong about it. About the case he's having with the client who want to gain weight. So I feel just if we take it as a way that same idea that we want to help a client to lose weight, but the same tips, the same diet we're giving, but it's going to be in the opposite direction. So if we think about it this way, that what we are supporting or what we are helping that client who want to gain the weight, or what we are instructing him, and what to avoid or what to go with to advise, we need to see the case that to flip the issue in the other way and say, okay, and if I'm gonna do with this client to gain weight, so what that mean, the opposite things mostly gonna be with the client who wanna gain the weight. One of my examples to explain what I'm thinking about that, for example, like who wanna lose weight, we always want him to make sure that before, for example, to do any activity like sport or any workout, just make sure that you're not eating before at least a couple hours or light snacks meals, so you're gonna be active more on the gym. We can advise the one who wanna gain weight, eat, also make a gap, but then not 2 3 hours, 2 hours, for example. And for me, I need for 2 to 3 hours before going to the gym to stop eating. But for someone who want to gain weight, no, eat a meal that around 40 minutes to 45 minutes before you go, but it's gonna be a small meal, which gonna give him some energy to work out, because already he's skinny. So he's already the motivate to go and stay in the treadmill for 30 minutes or 40 minutes, or hold some weights or jump here or there, already his energy is not like someone who have his normal nutrition, his normal vitamins, his normal normal food values, what he's taken.
Gotcha. So it sounds like what you're suggesting is kind of like strategies to make sure that he is feeding more regularly versus someone who's trying to lose weight who would eat fewer or smaller meals, so that eventually it's like we tip the scale so that that person who's trying to gain weight is in a caloric surplus, the person who's trying to lose weight has fewer calories, and then they create a caloric deficit.
Yes, and as you mentioned
Yeah.
before, that the environment he's in, with whom he's eating. Do he
Mhm.
have family to encourage him to put the different type of the salad, or the food, or that this what who's push him to sit and keep and eat a full meal, a full portion he want to eat? Number one, the status for him, as you said, not only about he's a worker or not worker, about
Mhm.
how he see when is someone skinny, he don't have appetite to eat. So to open this is simple. So if the key is to open this client, or this case, his appetite for food, to see food in a different this perspective.
Right.
So
So changing his psychology around eating to make it more appealing to him so that, again, yes, he is able to eat more regularly and then getting his nutrient status up to a place that helps to support muscle development.
yeah, last thing I want to add, that most important part, that to know what type of client we have. If he's analytical thinker, that he want just only logic and just that data's on site, or he's expressive client, that he's you connect with him with your energy and with connection, with communication, or he's emotional, like he's more gonna go with you and understand and accept what you are giving him, tasks, or how to do the portions, in a harmony way. What we say, that he like to speak about his feelings, what he's going through that day, what is going on in his life, these issues. Or sometimes the type of drivers, they want just only outcome efficiency, that okay, I want, give me 1 2 3 program, I'm going to follow, that's it. So if we know the type of the client, so we're going to have a more smooth communication, or skills, or to how to catch his attention and open his mind to, and then we're going to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Noah, I want to bring it back to you. Based on, so essentially, it's a summary of that would be uh, what kind of communication style works best with your client. So, depending on where you are with this client, it's like, hey, we just did the intake, we had our first conversation. I don't really know them super well. I may have a sense of kind of who they are and how they're developing. Uh, is there any sense that you have for this client in terms of how to best communicate with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, no, honestly, it's kind of tough because this specific client doesn't seem to be very motivated at all
Mhm.
about this whole program, nutrition, focusing on his health. It's kind of yeah, it's not really. I haven't been able to read it, to be honest. Yeah,
And
I'm
that's fair. I
familiar.
mean, how many weeks or months have you been working with this person?
Just like a couple weeks.
Okay, cool. So still super early in the game.
Yeah, and I
Gotcha.
haven't talked to him very much about it at all. Just like the initial consultation, couple check-ins, um, and that's about it. Uh, I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question though. I
Yeah, I
haven't
mean
figured I
it's
haven't figured it out for this specific person. That's
and
a good question.
that's fair, especially as like you're newer to the coaching space or working with clients in a nutritional coaching capacity. If you
Mhm.
just started working with this client, like it will take probably a few interactions before you start to see some patterns emerge, and then you can confirm some of those tendencies, we'll say. For right now, if they're like a little bit more reserved, they don't, it maybe feels like they don't completely have buy-in and they're not highly motivated to take specific action. Part of your role here is going to be to elicit a little bit more of like, hey, what is that reason for you being here? What can I do to continue to support you? And those are conversations that are always evolving throughout the duration of the coaching experience, but are definitely more at the forefront. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves with your current client. Most people who come in and like share quite a bit of ambivalence. So it's like they state they have a thing that they really want to do. We help lay the groundwork for them, and then no action happens. This is, I think, a lot more common in coaching than people anticipate. The paradox being, it's like someone is giving me their time and their money, and they're not doing a thing, which feels very maddening as a coach. It feels frustrating, and then we often attach our ability as a coach or our worth as a coach to that person and their ability to take action, which I would encourage all coaches to try and avoid as much as possible. It's a very human thing to do, but it is not a satisfying way to build a coaching career. It's an outcome that you have some influence in, but very little control. That being said, if you're in that space right now and you are working with that ambivalent client, this is a lot of what we talk about in PN level 2, and also in foundational texts like motivational interviewing for in nutrition and fitness, which is sitting on my desk right here. Looking into kind of the ambivalent client, understanding how to communicate with them, how to draw out their deeper motivation, how to create specific actions that help to promote their motivation and give them greater autonomy so they feel like they're more in control of the process. Those are all things that you'll likely want to continue to evolve. But for right now, if we're early in the game, I like that you admitted, you're like, hey, I actually don't know this person super well. That's great. That's a good starting point. That is literally every starting point for every coach and every client, unless they are your family member or a friend that you've already known. Most clients are going to come to us as a blank slate, and we're going to fill in the pieces as we go with them.
All right. Hey, well, thank you guys. I actually got to get going, but thank you so much for the help.
Thank you for getting us started.
I will be back on here soon, but have a good one.
Cheers.
Bye.
Come back with an update.
All right. Got you.
Cool. Anyone else have a conversation, a question, or something that we can help with? Otherwise, we'll dive into some of the case studies from our PN community.
I have a question.
Anne-Marie.
Okay. Can we talk about the calculator a little bit more in detail,
Sure.
if you don't mind? So say I have an example as I have a client that's looking for balanced nutrition. She wanted to lose 25 pounds in 6 months, which was pretty reasonable. When I put it into the calculator, all her information, it comes back with the breakdown would be like 7 servings of protein, 4 to 6 vegetables, only 1 carb and 0 fat serving. So in that, when someone's looking for balanced nutrition, would you really adhere to like exactly what it says here? Like I move her in a gradual state. I don't like, throw it all out there at one time. And looking at what she was doing previously.
You have the printout in front of you, correct? Is that what you were leafing
I
through?
do.
Okay. Can you read the printout one more time? Its recommendations.
Yeah, sure. I can tell you all the details. So she's a female.
Cool.
73 years old.
Okay.
175 pounds. She she's looking to get to 147 in a 6-month time period.
Gotcha.
To lose weight, and she's looking for balanced nutrition.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
the what it's giving me is 7 servings of protein, 4 to 6 vegetables, 1 serving of carbs, and 0 fat.
Okay. So first of all, reading that, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, my approach with her was looking at what she was currently doing, when we started. She was only eating 3 servings of protein, 1 vegetable, 4 carbs a day, and she's having 2 fats a day. I'm gradually moving her in the direction that would be closer to what the suggestion is. upping, increasing her like getting protein first at each meal would be beneficial. I think moving vegetables up, increasing that because she's only eating one vegetable a day. So the importance of bringing that up would be good. Hoping that adding the vegetables and increasing the protein would crowd out some of her carbs that she's having so many of. So moving her in the right direction of reducing those over time. But I guess I'm really curious to hear from you. Would you suggest that at some point that she does not incorporate any healthy fats into her diet if we're looking for balanced nutrition?
Gotcha. Okay. So one of the things that the calculator doesn't, or I haven't used the printout in a while, but I'm not sure if it makes it explicitly clear. Maybe this is something that we can do in a future update. But
Okay.
whenever you see 0 servings or very low servings of dietary fat, it is because the assumption is, especially if you're eating a whole food diet that includes animal protein, that you're getting dietary fat from animal-based sources. So they're, even if they have like one identifiable whole fat or whole food fat source, they are still going to be getting dietary fat from cooking foods and from animal sources. So it will never just be one thumb of fat and then no other dietary fat enters their system. The other thing I would say is like, or more of a question is, if we were to work towards that output, does that represent balance for this client? Would that be closer to what their idea of balance is?
I think that she would want to incorporate more carbs and less protein is her preference. I mean, she's
Mm-hmm.
very really big into, I mean, one thing that we're focusing on besides is the quality of the carbs that she's eating, is trying to make that
Yeah,
switch into something a little bit healthier choices as far as that goes. But it's not something that would be ideal for her to say that you can have, to suggest that she has one serving of carbs a day would not be ideal for her.
gotcha. So that doesn't fit her idea of balance.
No.
Cool. So I would keep in mind here from like kind of currently where she is and where the calculator suggests she should be. Those are going to be two distinct endpoints, and where you're going to end up is somewhere in the middle of those 2 points. That's where she's more likely to find balance. So some of those things will trend towards the calculator. Some of them will trend a little bit towards her preferences or current kind of state. That will likely be increasing protein trending towards the calculator output. Doesn't mean it's going to hit it 100% or that it needs to hit it 100% for this to be successful. For carbs, again, you'll likely end up somewhere in the middle. Current intake is maybe a little bit too high. Calculator intake is a little too low. The goal is going to be finding the Goldilocks zone. So moving slowly along that continuum to then get to a place where it feels like, hey, I feel well nourished. I feel satisfied by my food choices. And it's starting to have an influence on my body composition. And then figure out where is the logical place that that ends, where it's like, I no longer feel satisfied by my food choices, or my body's no longer adapting to this well. And then the same thing happens for dietary fat and fruits and vegetables. So when we see the calculator output, especially if there is an output where it's like, this strikes me as a weird way to live, that is my suggestion. It's like, okay, we know that we need to trend in that direction. We do not need to model that as a lifestyle to sell to people. For that low calorie output, there's another thing that I think the calculator may miss here, and that is the gap between having a plan and implementing a plan. So if I were to give you a very detailed plan of here's all the things that you need to implement in order to get that outcome, here's the timeline that we think it would be relevant in. So it's like, let's say 6 months for this, for 25 pounds of weight loss. The calculator is smart. It does take into account some adaptation over time. Where I think it maybe falls down is that understanding a plan is not adapted in the same level as our physiological response. So it may take her 3 to 4 months to just start to move along the continuum till she gets to a place where it's like, oh, now this is impacting my body. I think James Clear has this metaphor where he's like, assume that it's like you're a mason and you're pounding away at a rock. and you've been at it for 50 strikes and the rock looks exactly the same. And then you've been at it for 75 and there's like a really tiny hairline crack. And then on the 100th strike, the rock actually breaks open. It's like not that entire time before that was useless. It's just that you may not have seen the specific outcome that you wanted to see. So we're also looking at this from the perspective of your client has some skills and strategies that they need to adapt. It may take them some time to do that. Understand that the calculator is assuming that they're employing these strategies and that it's given or that you are giving to your client pretty much right away. So I would be very skeptical if like 6 months from now they've reached their endpoint. Unless again, maybe they're that client who's like, I'm really gung-ho, I have all the skills, I just need kind of a steady hand to guide me and to confirm that I'm on the right path. They exist, but they are few and far in between.
Okay. All right, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions pop up either in relation to Anne Marie's discussion or something else that folks want to bring up here?
I have a question, and I feel like I should know the answer to this, and I don't. So I have been working with a client, and she is not hungry in the mornings. She doesn't eat breakfast. She's never wanted to eat breakfast. She's 75, as well as Anne-Marie's client, and has never been a breakfast eater. But she definitely needs to increase her calories. So she asked me yesterday when we met, she goes, is there a reason why I don't feel hungry in the mornings?
Few reasons I can think of. So it's like some of our digestive processes ramp down when we're asleep, and then they take a little bit of time to ramp up the next day. So if you kind of like even, I think the cortisol chart actually mirrors this quite well. I don't know, I wouldn't say that the hormone itself is the one sole responsible for this, but we know that digestive activity slows down overnight as the gut is typically empty. And then it takes a little time to warm up in the morning. So some folks don't feel hunger. Some actually feel nauseous if they eat super early. Some of it may just be kind of like preference mixed with biology. The interplay there is probably, it's like, where does one begin and one end? It's going to be hard to tease out. I am also like one of those people. I feel a little, if I actually wake up early, I do feel hungry. If I wake up between 6 and 7 a.m., I have noticeable hunger. If I ignore it by 10, 11, it completely fades into the background. Then around midday, it peaks up again. And then I could ignore it for a little while and then it comes back stronger. So it's just kind of like riding that wave. And for a lot of folks, like it'll peak up at certain times. And if we feel it and act on it, then great. And if not, it'll peak up later on in typically more intense fashion. Yeah, my go-to answer when a client asks me this tends to be along the lines of digestive processes are not as strong at certain times, so you just don't feel it as much. Is that true? It's enough for most folks. But we can probably dig into this one a little bit deeper, but that is the response that I typically go with. Diane, I see that you unmuted as well.
Yes. Is she possibly eating late in the evening?
She is not. I did explore that with her yesterday on our call.
Because I see that with a lot of patients where they're like eating quite a bit at 7 o'clock at night, and they're, your stomach just doesn't empty as fast when you're older. And I have, as a short, fat, older woman, I have a lot of issues with the calculator. I don't think that's a sustainable diet at all, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Jeremy, because I've been on those diets before. That's how I got fat. I'd like starve myself, and then I'd make up for it. And 1,200 calories. If the woman has sarcopenia or osteopenia, it's just putting them at more risk, I think.
Typically, when we see a calculator output where it's like there's very low carbs and very low fat, it tends to be that the timeline is more aggressive than we
I've stretched
should
the
maybe.
timeline out and everything. It's just at a certain weight, they decide you just don't need to eat.
Right. And I mean, that is mostly, it's like, hey, this is really aggressive. We would encourage you to maybe not do that thing on that timeline. 25, like for Anne Marie's example, I would say like 25 to 30 pounds. That's looking mostly, for most folks, is closer to kind of like a year and a half of actual weight loss, where we factor in that skills may not be all in place on day one. Barbara, yeah, to come back to your question there, does that give you kind of a little bit of insight? Actually, what Diane mentioned as well is also something that I considered. As folks age, hunger signaling seems to get quite blunted, and we know that like with older folks than the population that both of you are working with right now, getting them to eat becomes challenging because it's just like hunger is not there. Swallowing sometimes becomes an issue. It's an interesting space to work in. I will say I don't have the most experience with it, but yeah, people who are not hungry in the morning, I would look at trying to figure out, okay, what other strategies can we work with first before trying to get into kind of force feeding, and making someone to be like, let's completely change the way that you've lived over the last 75 years. Secondary to that, like, what is the easiest way to make this change? Often liquid nutrition does a decent job there. And then if there needs to be some significant change, wondering or having a conversation about like, what is really the value of this and how does this help you long term, and not only during your time working with me.
Perfect. Thank you.
No worries. We'll go one quick share for today. Oops. I'm just going to pop this into the chat box. If you are in the PN coaching community, it's actually been up for a few days. But maybe you saw this one, and for folks who are not able to click on the link because you're watching this on YouTube later, let me see if I can share my screen. Cool. So Coach Charlene Bent shared this question. It pops up occasionally, and it was essentially asking, what's going on with our tortilla brand here, Mission Carb Balance tortillas. Seems to be really low calorie, really low carb. The math is not mathing. What the heck is going on? And it is a interesting conversation here, I think, by and large. We see that if you can zoom in a little bit on some of the calorie breakdown, in big bold letters, you see that it's like has 70 calories. But when we're looking more detailed here, we can see 3.5 grams of fat, 19 grams of total carbohydrate, and then 17 grams of dietary fiber. So how do we make those numbers make sense? Anyone here want to hazard a guess into what is going on? What kind of devilry is happening here?
They're subtracting the carbs, the fiber from the total carb count.
Exactly, yeah. So they're looking at dietary fiber and then reducing that dietary fiber and then giving us 2 grams of net carbs, which then makes the math make sense. So instead of it having something in the range of 135 calories, it then has 70 calories. And what is essentially happening here is like there's kind of like a half truth happening. So when we take out dietary fiber, because we know that both soluble and insoluble fiber contribute to metabolism in different ways. Insoluble fiber typically passes through the body without being metabolized significantly, whereas soluble fiber, there is some metabolism that happens specifically in the gut where it is broken down by some of our gut microorganisms and turned into other compounds that do release energy into our system. So that being said, I believe there is a rule where you can subtract some of the dietary fiber and it doesn't have to be listed in the total calories. The question that this poses to coaches, if you were in a situation where it's like, hey, Mike, I have a client who is consuming kind of like a lower calorie option or a higher fiber option. How do we go about tracking this? My suggestion would be whatever makes their life the easiest is what we can go with. There's kind of like the more high-minded, practical or academic answer, which I was just sharing. Metabolism does happen to some degree. There is some energy in calories being shared with us from this meal that may not be tracked as accurately as 70 calories. That being said, it doesn't really matter as long as your client is regularly consuming this thing. That is the first question. Is this a food item that pops up in their day-to-day, or is this a one-off thing? If it's a one-off thing, unlikely to be worth the brain power to figure out what the actual number is. If this is something where they eat it more regularly and it's a dietary staple for them, then we just need to decide, do we track this as option A or option B? And as long as we're able to do that and we have consistency over long-term tracking, then we can make appropriate changes as needed. So if they decide, I'm going to call this 70 calories, great. If we need to make an adjustment at some point in the future, it's like maybe that is something where we re-examine this and then change the value or change how much we consume of it. If they decide to keep it at 130 and they're like, I'm actually dropping weight faster than I predicted, it's like, great, let's either maintain that course, or if you need to bump it up, make the adjustment there. So it is interesting, I think, for us nutrition nerds to take a look at this stuff, have a little bit of a deeper understanding here. When it actually comes to guiding clients, it very much depends on, is this a regular conversation that we need to have? Or is this something where it's like, this is a one-off and we don't really need to waste too much time and effort digging any deeper here? But useful to understand to help guide clients in an appropriate way so that they feel confident in the choices that they're making. Any questions or any comments before we sign off for today? Cool. Then we can leave it here for today, folks. Thank you for joining in our conversation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I hope to see you again next week. Cheers, folks.
Thanks, Jeremy.